It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, to inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. Folks, it is time to wake up the lions. And I have an absolute lion with me today. Very happy that this gentleman decided to come on this podcast as well. I've had the pleasure of talking to him on one of my other ones, and I cannot wait to have another fantastic conversation. Please welcome to the show Navy veteran and board certified health coach Jonathan McLernon. Jonathan, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's Friday, it's summer, and the sun is shining, and so it's a good day for talking about this. And I think just before we got on, I've been feeling a little more feisty. I'm like, let me just dive right into it. Well, so and we'll learn about my testimony, my backstory, and things like that. But a minister, I'll say in the church or the faith group that I'm a part of, recently said something to my brother. He lives overseas and whatnot. Like our gatherings aren't meant to be broadcast like a podcast for the world. I was like, are you an idiot? Why not? Do you understand the most fundamental principle of like the gospel is the sower and the seed? And the term broadcast actually refers to sowing the seed, not judging the soil. It refers to scattering the seed and let the seed determine what's good or not good soil because the good soil will respond. Like,
Wow.
who are you to like put a cap on this? Tell him to get his butt in gear and like, So, anyways, I was like, I got fired up about this. I was like, no, 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 you don't get to judge the soil. You scatter the seed, and let it fall where it may. And like, what are you worried about? Is someone going to say mean things on the internet? Probably, but like, look at what Paul went through. Look at what Peter went through. And they got these crazy, amazing testimonies. Like Paul in jail. Good grief, Peter in jail. This wasn't like some five-star hotel. This was no electricity, no running water. There's probably crap in the corner and the smell of urine, and you know, um, and they were singing. Like, what are we doing?
Man, you
So
are feisty today.
that's what I was feeling. I was like, so get up and say something. And it's funny because I don't consider myself a preacher. I don't have a congregation. I don't have a or anything like that. I do write on Substack, Wrestling with Truth, and it's just where I get into it. I'm like, it's kind of my way to think and process and figure this stuff out because I don't think I have all the answers. And then I take my stuff and I'm like, let me subject it to other people's views and opinions. When they put it out there publicly, see who responds, how they respond, what they like or not. I do have one follower on Substack who, bless his heart, he calls me a modern day Jeremiah, and I'm like, okay, let's.
Wow.
I love it. I appreciate I love it in the sense that I appreciate that you value what I'm sharing. However, Jeremiah went some pretty hellish times, and so I'm like, I want to be careful about that. I mean, I've had some ups and downs in my life too, but I'm hesitant to sort of line myself up with a prophet of the Old Testament here just yet. Let's
Right.
um, we'll ease up on that. Thank you for the sentiment, though.
Go easy with the grease
Um,
gun. A little bit, but yeah, for sure. That's a heck of a compliment, though.
yeah, just enough to make me feel encouraged enough to keep going when my. So here's what here's the funny thing. When I would write about railing against sort of leadership in our church group and be like, you guys are absolutely failing. You're abdicating your responsibility, and here's why. I don't just sit there and poke holes. I go, here's why, and here's what you need to do based on what I can see. Lots of people like it, view it, share it, whatever. When I write about love is not even true, and go, let's talk about what actual love is versus what you think it is, and I get like 5 likes, but I get that one comment that goes, "Keep going." I'm like, that helps, And I don't write for the likes. I write because I'm trying to get my thoughts out. Then I wanted a home for them, and that's what Substack became. But yeah, there's this post from a gentleman who goes by the name of the Naked Pastor, and I believe he has good intentions, and he probably suffered from like a hard legalistic, religious slant at some point in time in his life. But it was Jesus talking to a group of religious ministers, and he said, "You use the Bible to determine what love is. I use the Scripture to determine what love means. I use love to determine what Scripture means." And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like good on paper, sort of, but not really. So let me break it down and say, let's talk about the love of Christ. Because if you want to say God is love, what are you picturing? Are you picturing that this is like, I don't know, a fairy godfather who grants all your wishes and makes your life comfortable? I don't think so. I think you're missing it. So I pulled out First Peter 4 and 17, 18. And this is an interesting verse because I think it gets lost. If the righteous be scarcely saved, what happened to the unrighteous? I'm paraphrasing at this point,
Sure.
but I zoomed on this word scarcely. It's okay. What does it mean? Because I don't think it means your salvation hangs by a thread. Because if you feel like it hangs by a thread, you're tentative and you're fearful, right? I was like, no, no. But scarcely, when it was originally written, was meaning through hardship. Through hardship, you receive salvation.
Hmm. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just firing away. I'm like giving her,
No,
and I'm
dude,
like,
it's wonderful. Go
um,
ahead.
and I was like, okay, so this is where I need to zero in. Because if you go back earlier in the chapter, Peter talks about, he said, like, count it all blessing, basically, when you suffer persecution for righteousness' sake, not just for doing dumb things. For righteousness' sake, count it a blessing because it's through hardship that you're saved. But what he was also saying is essentially, if you're not saved, your suffering is only the beginning of sorrows. Our God is a redeeming God. Our suffering gets turned into something. And my story and my testimony is an example of that. Our God's a redeeming God. The moment death entered human existence, suffering was inevitable. But with God, it's redeemed because death is not the end. There's eternal life with Him if we're saved. But for those who refuse and reject God and say, I don't want you in my life, we will not have this man to reign over us. Okay, you've made your choice. Okay, well, the suffering you experience now is just the beginning. And it's not because God wants you to, but it's because God is not a tyrant. He said, fine, if you don't want me, I want you. I've tried to win your heart. I didn't even kick the door down to your heart. Sent Jesus, who went and laid down his life and showed us what true love actually looks like. Someone who could have called down legions of angels and ruled over the earth with an iron fist, and instead subjected himself and laid down his life and suffered the most brutal, torturous death, and still didn't sin to
Hmm.
take our place and to even tasted hell, separation from God. And then was resurrected. And Paul said, if it wasn't for the resurrection, we of all men would be most miserable. But we're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow. All right. No, you're very strong in your faith, and I love that. You and I have talked multiple times. I mean, it's always out there, and you've written a lot on it and that type of thing. Was that always the case in your life? I mean, were you like raised with that, or did you come to it at some point?
no, I was often quite ashamed of my faith in one sense, and I was ashamed of being ashamed of it too, which is this weird double whammy to kind of find yourself caught in. I mean, I was raised in a Christian household. I was raised in a relatively obscure Christian group. Sometimes people call us the two by twos or whatever. Send out homeless itinerant ministers in pairs to go and preach the gospel, live among the congregants, live off the donations of the people. An attempt to imitate sort of what you read of Acts
Hmm.
in some approximation, along with sort of the original sending of what's the word I'm looking for, when they sent them out two by two in Matthew 10 thereabouts.
Okay.
So it was an attempt to kind of approximate the spread of the gospels we see in the Old Testament. It started back in about 1897 by a Scottish fellow, a former Presbyterian, who was like, hey, I think we need to do something different. He was trying to move away from legalism and more into faith-based stuff in some sense. So probably some degree of good intention, but it didn't take long for it to get corrupted. You get bitten by the exclusivity bug. Living witness doctrine. You got to hear it from one of these preachers to be saved. If you don't hear it from one of these preachers, you can't be saved. Hey, did you forget you didn't hear it from one of these preachers? I don't know. But anyways, so that's kind of this foundation. So I'm a part of this. I like some aspects of it. We get together at homes. We have testimony. We have prayer. We have the sacraments in the middle. That kind of thing. I like gathering like that. I've been to big old churches, and it's not my thing. I'm like passionate, but I don't like massive groups.
Hmm.
I like shared, sort of intimate kind of interaction and conversation where there's room for depth. And I think that's what I appreciate. But our church, probably like anything that gets caught up in exclusivity, a couple of years ago, the floodgates kind of opened. Minister was found dead in a hotel room, had a bunch of
Oh, wow.
stuff. It turns out this guy was a serial sexual predator, um, all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And since then there's been a reckoning with like tens of thousands of victims coming forward, historical stuff, like huge numbers of abusers. Because when you travel among the congregants, when you claim to be the sole arbiter of salvation, I say that we made our ministry and our form of fellowship idols. So we put them as arbiters between us and God, even unintentionally, if we pretended we didn't. But it was like we talk about people who leave the fellowship as not saved or things like that, like they've lost out and whatever. There's all this kind of like conditioning that exists within it that like completely disregards scripture, sadly. And so, as you can, I actually still attend the Sunday morning gatherings because I like to meet with my parents, have fellowship with them, and so on. But I don't really hold any exclusivist leanings anymore.
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
but yeah, so that was so as a kid though, like we lived in a small town. We walked up the road to someone else's house to go for our Sunday morning gatherings. And we lived across the road from the main grocery store. My friends would like ride by on their bikes and be like, "Ah, you going to church?" And you know, it was just like, oh, and I'd walk around our little high school or whatever when I was a teenager, and people would be like, 666, oh, the devil's gonna get you, and stuff like this, and they would just, you know, and I mean, really, it wasn't that big a deal. But when you're like a kid trying to have friends, it feels like a big deal.
Yeah.
Like when you're a little bit of an outcast and whatnot. So it was kind of tough. And then I kind of decided, well, I got to figure this business out. So for a few years, I wouldn't say I was like a very good Christian. I wasn't very diligent. I kind of got into the party lifestyle, got into girls, just got into living a not very not Christian life, I'll say. Um, and I was about 21 when I had one of many wake up moments. I had this girlfriend. We're at this party. You know, she's a very very good looking girl. Um, we're drinking. It's a Friday night. The music's thumping. There's like good food going around. She was Mexican. And it was with a bunch of like Mexican like exchange students at my university, and I was just this was supposed to be like the pinnacle of my life. And I just looked around the room and I was like, is this it? 21 years old, hot girl, good party. I'm still gonna go home and feel empty tonight. I got to do something different. Like this is as good as it's going to get. I can't accept that this is the best I'm ever going to get in my life.
Yeah.
And so I ended up breaking up with her. I got back together once, relapsed, but then broke up with her again. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm not gonna date again until I know that I'm gonna be serious about this. I'm gonna find someone who has a shared belief. She was a Catholic, but she wasn't a very good Catholic. you know, and so I was like, no, I've got to figure this out. And then like the girl who eventually became my wife came into my life, and we ended up getting married and so on. At 29, I was nearly murdered. And that was a super hard experience to go through. And I'm kind of skipping over some details because we may have talked about it in the other episode. But where I want to talk about it here is that night, four guys tried to beat me to death. And that night, I was like, I can't die tonight. In this experience, while guys are kicking and stomping and beating on me, in my head, I'm like, I can't die tonight because my soul will be in hell. And that sounds like a very harsh thing to say. I know God spared me in that experience. But what he showed me is he said, you're a cerebral Christian. In other words, you're a smart guy. You can quote Bible verses. You can say nice stuff in your fellowship gatherings. You can sound like a good Christian, and yet you've hidden your heart from me. And so you still haven't made me Lord. It's like you're using me like an insurance policy.
Right.
Oh, that was pretty harsh. And I went through like a decade of mental health struggles, PTSD, binge eating, food addiction. I hated myself. I had to dig my way out of that hole. And in that sort of decade of struggle, I mean, I'm kind of shortening so we can chat a bit more. But I went into business with a guy who was like a brother in Christ and so on. And it turns out he was a narcissist and pathological liar. And the business was it was basically, it wasn't a scam. It was a bricks and mortar business. It was legitimate business, but he had it for other purposes, basically to like lose money and stuff, like to be a write off for this other business he had. And it was a bunch of shady accounting. And long story short, I got left holding the bag, lost a bunch of money, all my
Ouch.
life savings, had to go back to
Yeah.
my wife and go, what now? I got nothing but debt. And this thing that we were going to build into a franchisable business is just nothing. I don't have anything. Like I had to try to rebuild myself from that. So the way that I look at it is this: I think obviously I'm gifted, but I'm not the only. We all are. We're all gifted. God gives us something. When we're born, we're bestowed, or when we're conceived, really, we're bestowed with some gifts written into our genetic code, but we don't know it. We just grow up and people say nice things about us. Oh, you're cute, or you're this, or that, you're good at this, and so on. Then we might get lifted up. I was a pretty good looking young guy. I was in great shape, looked good with my shirt off, had a hot girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I had the world by the tail. I'm a chemistry major. I'm a smart dude who looks good, who's an athlete, who has a hot girlfriend, who got the world by the tail, kind of thing. And then life humbles you, like completely, where everything I thought that mattered, like, didn't matter. Push came to shove when I was nearly murdered. Like, there's only one thing that mattered. Like everything else was totally meaningless at that point in time. And
Wow.
you'd think that, oh, that's going to be the turning point, and you're going to tell me that for the rest of your life you've just been a good, faithful Christian. I'm like, wouldn't that be?
That wasn't
Look,
it
it,
though.
it was a, it wasn't. So I went through like financial ruin as well. So in this, what I believe is God was showing me, like, you can't coast on your gifts, but even your gifts left to your own devices lead to your own ruin.
Hmm.
And it's like, when will you commit them to my care?
Wow. I mean, at what point did those words go through your head? Was it after the financial situation?
Yeah, yeah. When I was like, I'm like, I don't even know what to do now. Like, I don't want to, like, without trying to sound lifted up, it's like, I don't want to just go back and do a job. I can't. Like, I'd been on my own doing my own thing for a few years now. I was like, I can't just go back and do some job. When I look back, I realize that I've had kind of a gift for teaching, for coaching, for mentoring, for seeing the way that I do describe is I see potential in other people. And my brain just lights up when I see someone's potential. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you could see what I see in you. And I can't explain it fully. It's not that I'm psychic, I'm not clairvoyant, but I seem to have this ability to read people. And I go, wow, I see something in you. And if I could only help you see that, and it's like that's my thing in life. I've often found myself being like a Daniel, where I'm like an advisor to royalty.
Hmm.
And it's like you have something, but this gift you've been given is actually to serve other people. It's not for you to become lifted up and become this thing, but it's for you to go and serve other people with it. And so what I do today professionally is really a byproduct of that. I don't work exclusively with Christians. It'd be great if I wouldn't say it's actually good to work with non-Christians as well, because hey, they might see something, they might feel something, they might wonder like, where's this all coming from?
Right.
um, Always be prepared to give reason for the hope that you live within you, or that you have within you. Again, I'm paraphrasing, sorry God. um,
I
I'm
think he
like,
understands.
sometimes when I get going on these little rides, I'm like, I just start throwing verses out there. I'm like, I should have this one better.
You're good,
But
man.
so that's in a nutshell kind of where I find myself. And I find myself really passionate about like wanting to speak up, because I'm just like, man, there's vices at every turn. In like never before do we have access to the same, like, to the level of like vices that we do now. We're fighting a real spiritual warfare, like never before. And we need more people speaking up about this and not being afraid of like being called crazy or whatever. It's not conspiratorial, it's not crazy, it's actually understanding how the world works and where it's headed.
Right. How has spiritual warfare come at you? I mean, with everything that you've done, I mean, my goodness, you just said in like three sentences, well, I almost got beaten to death and then I started a business and lost everything. And it was like, I mean, dude, that was like bang, bang, bang. You've
Yeah.
had a few moments in your life. So
Yeah.
how has it
Well,
impacted you? What forms has it taken? That type of thing.
one would be like a voice in my head telling me how worthless I am, what a disgusting waste of skin I am, how useless I am,
Yeah.
how I can't even fix myself. Like, why even bother trying? I was never quite suicidal, but there was just an existential despair rooted in my perception of my own like worthlessness and uselessness. That was probably a big part of it, a big part of why I became obese and really struggled with that. I was just trying to cope with these just intense feelings. And it's not that God just like changed things overnight for me, because I had to struggle with it, I had to wrestle with it, I had to develop my strength. The strength that I have today came from the things I had to wrestle with and contend with to get to here, to then actually be able to work with and reach people in those places too, because I'm like, I didn't just like sort of taste it. Like, I lived a decade of like mental health despair, and it was like
Wow.
God said, this has to leave a mark on you, basically. So you will never forget this. And then you will now be used to reach and help other people in some way. And again, it's not that I have a massive following, things like that. We saw, I'm not looking to be a mega church pastor or something like that. I'm not trying to knock all these guys, although some of them are charlatans. Let's be real. But it's like in the spot that you have, like, I want you to do something with it. I want you to be able to take these gifts I've given you, and actually use them appropriately. But in terms of spiritual warfare, the other one is some pretty weird dreams. I say weird dreams. That's a bit of an understatement. And I've often been afraid to talk about them, because I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm nuts. Because I wonder if I'm nuts when I have a dream like this. I'm like, what? Was this real or not? Did I just make this stuff up? Um, there's one dream that I've had four times, and it has the same theme every time. First time it happened to me was about 2015. So the time of recording, about 10 years ago. I was working in the oil patch, So, I don't know, oil patch in Alberta. I mean, some people probably know what the oil patch is. It's fracking, it's drilling, it's just hard physical work. You know, slinging iron, driving big trucks, running big machinery, that kind of stuff. And I was in a hotel room, and I had this insanely intense dream where it felt like a demon was trying to rip my spine out of my soul, or sorry, out of my body, and it was trying to get into my head and like held my face so I couldn't say words and things like that. When I woke up, my first thought was, I wonder if I had a seizure. It wasn't, oh, I encountered like some kind of spiritual entity, you know. It was, so I pulled myself off the job, went and got medically checked out, because my first thought wasn't, oh, this is spiritual warfare. It was like, oh, I wonder if I had some kind of seizure. I better be kind of worried about this, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Got medically checked out and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you have anxiety. It's like, I woke up like feeling like I had spent the night wrestling with something trying to rip my spine out of my body and like get into my head and possess my face and mouth. I was like, oh, but then I kind of just forgot about it. I was like, okay, whatever. Just I don't know what to make of this. So I'm just gonna carry on with my life and maybe just hope I never have something like that again, and just whatever, you know. There's it's always these doubts that kind of creep in a little bit. You're like, honestly, I'm not nuts. Then it happened, and then I had another dream like this, and very similar features. The room is the walls are like this dark red color with black trim around it, and this thing comes in and it tries to come in the back of my head, and it tries to, like, my face becomes like almost paralyzed and I can't utter words, and but actually there's one detail I forgot is I finally managed to get the word Jesus out, and it's the only thing I
Ah,
can say is calling his name, and
yeah.
then the room changes, and it changes to this like light sky blue kind of color. I don't see him, but like this presence enters the room and basically banishes this demon, and peace comes. And three more times I had that dream, and it's spaced out a couple, sometimes a year, 2 years, or whatever. But I want to say, like, what the he double hockey stick?
Right.
Like, what do I do? So I said, God, what do I do with this? Like, what is this? You know, what does this mean? Why do I
Hmm.
have these experiences? Like, I'm like, and he said, but the fourth time it happened, I was in Australia. My wife's Australian, so I was in Australia, and my son, he was probably 2.5, 3 at the time. He's sleeping in a little pack and play. I'm in a single bed. My wife and my other boy were in the other room, and he's got this little nightlight, this little silicone chicken or whatever. You smack it, it changes colors, that kind of thing. And the fourth time this happened, I woke up like out of it. The dream happened, and actually the room itself was blue, because somehow in his sleep he would have whacked the light, and the thing is, it changes colors. You have to like whack it on a certain color to get it to stop. Well, there's no way that he in the middle of the night whacked it and turned it blue, because he doesn't like it. He wants it that orange glow, and so the room is like filled with blue. And I was like, okay, this is, and I feel like so physically exhausted when this happens. Like there's this real, like it's very intense. And so I was like, okay, well, Lord, okay, this keeps happening to me.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? And he said, well, testify. Because I said this. I said, okay, I've had these experiences a number of times. They're very intense, but I know what happens. Life goes on. Sort of the intensity and gravity of that situation leaves me, and I just get busy with life. I got 2 kids, I got a wife, I got a business. Like, I just carry on with life in a sense. And I said, well, what do I do with this? And he said, you testify. You tell other people about this. Okay, I will, I guess, with some reticence, but I will, you know. And so spiritual warfare is real. It exists. And when I shared it with someone, he told me about a dream he'd had about kind of about a golden dragon chasing him down his hallway.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm not the only one, I guess.
I think as long as you're able to summon, Jesus's name in the middle of that, it's kind of like you,
That's
you come out okay.
that's the feature. That's like the key thing, is every time like my face is, I'm like wrestling, and that's the only thing I can utter. And it's the only thing I want to utter, because I know in
Right.
that moment that's the only name that can help me. And the way that I thought about it, it's like there's a symbolism in one sense, right? It's coming from my mind, right? It's coming for my spirit. It's coming for something, and it's wanting to silence me,
Yeah.
whatever this is, you know. And so, yeah, it's there's something there. So then I realized, okay, I'm gonna now. I mean, like I went after my own fellowship in a sense. I went after the leadership, the upper level ministry in my writings. And the first time I did it, I was really scared. I was like, who am I? Who am I to stand up and say like these guys? They're spirit anointed ministers of the gospel, and I'm sitting here calling them whited sepulchres because they won't do anything about child abuse that's occurred in our ranks. And I'm a dad. The thing that pushed me to actually speak up and overcome my fear of speaking up was the fact that I'm a dad with two kids
Yeah.
at ages where some kids had been abused. And if there was ever something that got me pretty close to committing murder, it'd be someone hurting my boys, you know?
Phew.
And so I spoke
Yeah.
up. And you know what was really weird? I was expecting a lot of backlash, and instead I got met with dead silence. Not one of them said a word to me. I wrote an email, sent it out, blah, blah, blah. Not even a word. Not like, hey, you're trying to, blah, blah, blah. Not a word. So then a couple months later, I wrote another letter, and somebody said the silence is deafening. We have this major issue. If you were ever going to stand up and like be godly men of integrity, you would root this out. You would fight it. You would with every fiber of your being, because the most heinous crime you could ever commit is to hurt a child,
Absolutely.
and you're dead silent. And then the last one that I kind of wrote to them was basically, "Where's the spirit of David? Sackcloth and ashes. My sin is ever before you." Like this broken, repentant spirit. Like we, whether directly or indirectly, have been responsible for a subculture of abuse within our fellowship, where those in positions of authority have abused their authority to prey on the most vulnerable in our ranks. If that doesn't make you want to stand up and fight evil, like what will? It's like, where are you? Where are your spines? So that was that. It's funny. It didn't get me excommunicated. They just ignore me instead.
So it's
Like,
just silence at every turn with everything that you send over,
well,
just absolute
and
silence.
then like, yeah, and well, not really, because I put it on Substack. Honestly, I never expected my Substack to go anywhere. I was like, I just wanted a house from like a home for my writing, basically, so I didn't lose it. Because here's the thing: this big scandal breaks, and it's really intense. And there's been like major news networks have covered it in like the UK and Australia and Canada, the US. Like it's not a secret. The FBI is investigating our organization. Like this is serious business, and they're also looking into money laundering too. Like, and it's wild. These are supposed to have been like, men of God. And I'm like, you're literally trying to save your own damn skin
Man.
instead of stand up for truth. Like, what is this? And then you're afraid to even let your messages be like broadcast publicly. Why? What are you afraid of? And so I go, what is your motive? What is the point of this? And so I got really frustrated by a lot of this. Um, but again, I don't fit into a tidy little denominational box either. I'm a bit of a, I guess maybe I'm a bit of a firebrand.
A little bit, maybe. Yeah.
So,
I love that you're
um,
willing to speak out for it, though. I mean, too many people
yeah.
have been quiet. That's the whole point of our program, is that, too many
Mm,
people take that and they just go, all right,
yeah.
well, I guess nothing's going to happen. I'll go back to being quiet. And you're not. If you're going to be a lion, you got to be a good one, And if you're going to
Yeah.
roar, you got to roar loud, So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah. These, here's the thing. They just kind of bide their time. They let the dissenters leave, and they just wait for those who are like fully indoctrinated. Like if I dare speak up, because here's the thing. When you believe that this is the only way to be saved, and if you speak up and get kicked out of this fellowship, you're now going to hell, you're going to shut your mouth.
Yeah, for sure.
That's anyone who's ever been in sort of an exclusivist denomination or sect or something like that understands the, like, unless you've been in it, it's hard. So I was scared to speak up, but I couldn't stay silent because I was like, there is a culture where my children are at risk, and if I don't do something, if I can't stand up for my own children, who am I? What kind of man am I?
Right.
And so I have this phrase: be a man of uncommon virtue. And it's become like my rallying cry when I'm like struggling with myself and I'm struggling with my nature. And be a man of uncommon virtue, because we live in a world of common vice. Let's feed
Mm.
you junk food. Let's feed you spiritual junk food. Let's feed you pornography, online gambling, junk food, alcohol, cannabis, like all these different vices, all to like ease your suffering, but actually leads you to greater suffering. And
Yeah.
I go, like, what was, the one commandment that gets a lot of flack is self-denial. And I go, I believe there is love in every aspect and every commandment that God has given us. So what is it about self-denial? Well, The pursuit of endless pleasure leads to addiction, and the end of addiction is death. Self denial literally saves our lives. And I do addictions counseling. I know how it destroys lives.
I didn't
So
realize
self
that you,
denial,
yeah, you do
yeah,
addictions counseling, huh?
yeah. I do like nicotine, cannabis, alcohol, gambling, porn, food. Those are my six. I stay away from opiates. That's a different beast. That's a medical. You got to get somewhere and get help. Like that's a hard one.
Right.
Um, all the
Wow.
common vices that are like socially acceptable in some context, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
I had
um,
no idea. Wow.
yeah. I mean, I do health coaching as well. So I
Sure.
have a lot of things under my umbrella. I guess I have a lot of things I'm passionate about. Clearly,
Yeah.
I'll put
I
it this
mean,
way: I've got pieces of paper with my name on it, so that means that I have tools in my toolkit. That's how I frame it. Is I got tools in my toolkit. You come to me and say, "I want to change my life in some way," and I go, "Hey, my gift is to see what your potential is, and then to help you unlock that potential. We have all these different tools we can work with to help you get there."
that's
So
great.
as broad brush as it sounds, I'm like, there's very few people I can't help. The ones I can't help are the ones that don't want to. You know?
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
You've been very vocal about, when it comes to your faith, you've been very vocal
Mhm.
on Substack about that kind of thing. And you've gone into a couple of different, pretty interesting directions, and you and I were
Yeah.
talking about a couple of them beforehand. Do you want to share any of that?
Yeah. Well, one of the ones that so my Substack, I think it's Wrestling with Truth. So it's me taking the things that I'm like, I see something, it's not sitting well with me. I'm going to say something. And there's this one that I haven't published yet at the time of recording this, but it's the over feminization of Christianity. I've been seeing this phenomenon. I've been trying to put my finger on it and go, what am I seeing? And why do I feel so bothered by this? So I go, what do I mean by the over feminization? So I view it as a reaction because what happened? Men used religion. So God imbued men with like power, with physical strength, with the ability to be dominant. So he gave us the ability to be that. You put any, like, look, end of the day, you put a group of guys against a group of guys wins. It should never be that because
Right.
God never called us to do that. He gave us this power and this strength to be leaders, not to be abusers. Without God, we abuse that authority. When I look at the abuse scandal in my fellowship, it's predominantly men abusing women and children. Not exclusively. There are women, but it's predominantly men
Right.
abusing women and children.
Yeah.
So that's authority and power not submitted to God or not submitted to Christ's lordship. So then the pushback is so you develop hard legalism to control people. When you have masculine authority, that becomes about control and about abuse of power. You get hard legalism. So then the pendulum swing on the other side of it is like this very soft, it's all about love, love, love. And you know what? When someone's been abused, when someone's been seriously harmed, they need some kind of gentleness and care to catch them. But you can't stay there forever because what it turns into is this permissiveness, this perpetual victimhood. And it's like you need, like when you get injured, you don't, like let's say you sprain your ankle, you don't start running sprints the next day. You get off your ankle, you wrap it up, you get rest, maybe you need crutches. But when your ankle heals and you start to get your strength back, you start training and getting your strength back.
Right.
And it's the same here. But instead, what we have is a bunch of men who've abdicated their responsibility because they just thrown up their hands and went like, because society's going this direction of emasculating, right? We could say, no, it's happening. Why? Because it's harder to control strong men. What is it? Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men.
Yep.
Well, we have some hard times coming, you know,
Yeah.
we do, you know,
No, for sure.
we're like just a very tiny sidebar. We're going to see a lot of people who are going to hand over their cognitive sovereignty to AI and make AI a god and become enslaved by it. Not because AI is sentient, but because of the people behind it.
Right.
It is going to be a tool to enslave humanity.
You and I are
That's my
like-minded on
prediction,
this. You and I are absolutely
right?
like-minded on that one. Yeah, for sure.
And why wouldn't you make it a god? You can get answers to your prayers faster. You don't have to struggle with it. Doesn't mean it's right, but And so this pendulum swing towards all softness, but men are frustrated by this. And it's like where the real problem is we got off of like Christ centered. We turned love into this fluffy, sentimental Hollywood rom-com thing where it's just like, you're fine just as you are. Jesus died for you, Christ loved you, your sins are forgiven, you're good. Don't suffer, don't struggle, don't change. you know what? Like the funny thing is, I've chatted with a couple of ladies about this. I said, ladies, I'm a guy. I have this piece I'm working on, but I want to hear your opinion. Don't hold back because I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm trying to describe a problem. And you know what? They're all like, hell yeah. Sorry. Oh, heck yeah. Right. Like,
Hey, you're just quoting them. I understand.
yeah. Right. There's this actual real response where they're like, yes, we want men to stand up and be strong too. We don't want men to beat us. Of course not. But we want men to stand up and be strong too. And the funny thing is, it's like when I align myself with Christ, like Jesus demonstrated love. Like it sounds love is love, God is love, yada yada yada. Hang on a sec. Okay, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. So Jesus came to earth in the humblest way possible, born in a barn, literally, with a smell of poop around him, basically. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way that anyone could like. There's no humbler way to be born into poverty in a stinky barn. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what happened,
Right.
right? And then you got to flee because they're putting to death a bunch of kids. Flee to a foreign country, be persecuted from like day dot. This guy grew up with a hard life. You lose your father young. You got to now be the firstborn. You got to take care of your family. You got to be a carpenter. You got to make a living in like a hard trade. Um, Before we're going out, and then now preaching the gospel, being rejected by your own people, to then and so on. Take up your cross and follow me. Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. What? So I had this question: what allowed him to do this? Because if it was all suffering, he wouldn't do it. And yet it said, yet for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross.
Hmm.
When we want to make a change in our life, when someone comes to me and says, I have this struggle with substance abuse, whatever it happens to be, I want to make a change in my life. I go to them and say, why? Why does this even matter to you? What's the point? Because if you don't have a good reason why you're willing to suffer and be uncomfortable, you're not going to do it. And so I'm not trying to be harsh, I'm not trying to be unkind. I'm just telling you, you have to have a reason why you're willing to suffer. For me, why do I fight to get my health back? Because I got two boys. I don't want to be a sideline dad. I don't want to be the fat guy on the couch who can't get down on the floor and play with his kids. Sorry for being blunt, but like I don't want to be that.
Right.
When I go to the gym and lift weights and I cultivate the strength that God gave me the ability to do, man, I feel alive. I'm not going around punching people in the face, being look how big and strong I am. No, I'm just going in there and going, and it feels so good. It feels so aligned with who I am. And my boys, they're like 4 and 2 right now. So of course I'm their hero, and I love it. Yeah, I love it. But I want to model for them. This is what it looks like. This is what real. But it's so this willingness to suffer is tied into it. But we're willing to suffer because of what is held out to us. Because God is a redeeming God. Your suffering precedes glory. We are willing to suffer because we are so inspired by the love of Christ. Right? He came and he died for us. How does that not inspire you to go, I will make you my Lord? Because he showed us the kind of Lord that he is. People want to try to paint God as this tyrant. This is not the case. Because if he was a tyrant, he would have just sent legions of angels, wiped out the Roman Empire, and been like, you are now Caesar.
Right.
He didn't do that. And Peter got a hard lesson when he lopped off that high priest's ear. He thought, we're going down in a blaze of glory, man. Here comes the kingdom of God. And Jesus said, nope. And Peter had his heart shown to him when he's like, oh, I guess I'm not ready to die tonight either. But you know
Right.
what? Later in his life, he was,
Yeah.
to the point they got martyred. Why? Because he saw the resurrection. He knew there was something more than death, and death lost its fear. We shut up and hide away and are scared when death has a grip over us. I'm afraid to die, so I'm going to shut up and not kick up the dust. Paul had this blinding vision of Christ, and like he was blind physically, but I guarantee you something was happening in his head when he was blind and laid up there and couldn't do anything before Ananias was sent to him. He was so fired up that he was beaten, he was shipwrecked. I mean, he was whipped 5 times to like one lashing away from death kind of thing. He was thrown in jail. He was bitten by vipers. The guy just was like unkillable, and you couldn't break his spirit
Yeah.
because he was so firmly committed because he saw the resurrected Christ. I know he said, I know there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness, not because of who I am. And on top of that, he goes, God gave me a thorn in the flesh. Why? Because I'd be lifted up otherwise. So I got this thorn in the flesh to keep me humble.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
But so it's like when we see the resurrected Christ, when we understand what got him there, God exalted him. Why did God exalt him and sit him at his right hand? Because of what he was willing to endure. He said, I'm committing all judgment to the hands of the Son. Why? Because of what he did. And so, how does that not inspire us to be willing to suffer? So, when our love is strong, we're willing to suffer. We're like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. We don't seek out suffering like masochists or nihilists. I don't mean that.
Right.
But we face suffering with courage because we know that death is not the end.
Very well said, man. I could not agree with you more. And that plays back into your entire point of, how Christianity's become so feminized because, you don't have men who are making those hard choices anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And so really it's a call, it's exactly this. It's a call to men to wake up and be strong. You know, the thing that I think about so much is we're commanded to love our wives like Christ loved the church. So it says wives submit yourselves to husbands, but it doesn't say husbands make your wives submit. It's a key distinction there.
yeah.
So I go, I have to win the heart and the love and even the submission of my wife through my sacrifice, through the laying down of my life, through the giving of my strength to protect and provide for my family to the best of my ability. I lay down my life in sacrifice because the authority that I'm given is not for me to lift myself up. It's actually a burden of responsibility, but I'm made strong to be able to carry that burden of responsibility, to honor my wife, to honor my children.
Nice. That's something that's totally lost on a lot of men that you have to earn that.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
earn that.
You don't get to take it
No.
because Jesus doesn't kick the door down to our heart. He could. He could.
Yep.
He could come right now. And there will obviously there's a time coming when he will come,
Yeah.
when the time is right. And only God knows that time. But for now, and I just want to throw one more thing out there. And maybe
Great.
this is I'll like lob this grenade in here and be like, hey, next time we chat.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm calling God a God of plausible deniability. Why? Because I mean I've done my wrestling with like atheists and evolutionists and things like that. There is some compelling evidence in that direction, and on top of that, you go like, why doesn't God just like show Himself? Because the moment He does, we have no choice but to bow down. What are you going to do when you see the all powerful, omniscient deity that exists? You have no choice at that point. Your free choice has been stripped away. So God, in His
Yeah.
mercy, He shows us glimpses. He showed Himself through Jesus, right? If you press hard enough, you will find God. But you have to strive for it. He doesn't just show up like a bolt of lightning, because if he does, now you're responsible with that, right? Look at Paul, what he was responsible for because of what he was shown.
Yeah.
So there has to be a compelling alternative. So we have to wrestle with this and come to our faith and come to love God. And then we know that if we are willing to struggle through the hardship of life, I'm willing because this is what I want in my life. I want Jesus to be my Lord. I want this. I love it so much that I'm willing to suffer whatever I have to suffer for it. I will fight for it because it means that much to me. Wonderful. Then comes the resurrection and eternal life. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah. It's funny because that's not that far out there. That might sound crazy to some folks, but I don't think anybody listening to this program is going to think that's crazy. I think they're already predisposed to be agreeing with you and I, but um, just the idea that if, God were to show himself, that then you have no choice anymore, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone's following you out of fear. And you take any
Yes.
leader anywhere and you ask them, do you want your people to follow you because they choose to follow you and they believe in you? Or do you want your people to follow you because they're afraid of you? I don't think there's a leader on the planet really that's going to choose, fear,
Yeah.
but it's just not as effective.
Yeah.
So it makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Yeah. And there are fearful things. So one other thing, and this will be probably another conversation, will be wrath and hell. These
Hmm.
exist. But you know what? When you know that they exist, here's what you know. You know what Jesus died to save us from. You know why he was willing to endure every single lash across his back, the nails in his arms, the nails in his feet. He was willing to endure that, the humiliation, the laying down of his life, because he was not just saving us from a party in hell where we're all going to drink and listen to rock and roll. He was saving us from eternal damnation.
Yeah.
That's why he was willing to go all the way, because that's how deep his love is. I wrote a piece in Substack called "The Sky Went Dark When He Bowed His Head," and I wrote about the final hours of Jesus' life, and that literally changed me, right? Just writing about that because I wrote it for me, but I mean I wrote it for other people to read too, and it's pinned to the top of my Substack. But I wrote it because I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand beyond a shadow of all doubt, what did he actually endure, so that I could really understand like how what divine love is. And that's why I'm so passionate when I feel so, I don't know, such a strong sense of distaste when I see people flippantly talk about like love is love and let's be all fluffy and nice to each other. Like I realize it's a bit hyperbolic, but that's basically what's getting
Right.
thrown around. And then it's getting called Christianity. It's like, no, take care of the injured ones, take care of the wounded ones. Yes, you show them care, but when their strength returns, like don't just give them milk, you give them meat. Get strong. Be strong again. Be strong in the Lord. Don't just sit there like a wounded victim, because God is a redeeming God no matter what you've been through. The
Right.
only limitation is what you put on God. I guess you can't do this for me, God. You know, I had that 2018, kneeling down in despair at my bed, being like, God, where are you? Like praying and feeling like I'm just staring into an empty black void, feeling utterly lost. Why can't I have peace? God, just crying out, you know, but I had to wrestle for it. But when it came, it's why I am who I am today.
Yeah. Jonathan, I love it. I really do. I keep meaning to follow you on Substack, man. I'm going to do it today. So it's wrestling
Yeah,
with truth, right? On Substack.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Excellent. Under Jonathan McLernon.
yeah.
Yeah.
It might be Coach Jon McLernon. I actually forget, because when I first set up Substack, I actually had four categories because I thought I was going to write about. One is called Beyond the Noise, so just writing about like cultural media events, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Real soft topics like organ harvesting in China and baby factories in Ukraine. Um, yeah,
Soft
which those
topics.
pieces exist. Oh,
Right.
tell you what, you want to get mad at the world, learn about some of these things.
Right.
And then think about God is watching this right now. But and then I had um, mostly no, mildly concerned, mostly amused, just parenthood stuff. Like my kids are funny, right? And who
Right.
that kids knows they're absolutely hilarious, right? Yeah, they tax you, but at the end of the day, they're just these little human beings trying to figure stuff out,
For
you know.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, my 4-year-old sat down on the couch the other day. He's like, "Dad, I need to rest my back." It's bedtime, right? He's like, "No, Dad, I gotta rest my back. I've had a hard day." You know,
Isn't that great?
oh, kid. And I'm like
Brother.
trying to keep a straight face because I'm like, you gotta go to bed, buddy. Like we're gonna go do bedtime together. But I'm like watching this little miniature version of myself like do this thing, and I'm just like, oh man. Yeah. So they come up with these great things, and there's just the greatest blessing. I'm like, man, I should have got started earlier having kids. I would have had like a dozen. Well, if my wife wanted to be fair.
I was
She's
gonna
the one
say
that has to pay.
I had
But
three
there's
and
so much.
yeah, my
Yeah.
wife was like, we're done.
Fair, yeah. And I expect, I don't even know if there's a third in the offing. My wife gets to choose that one. But yeah, kids are such a blessing. Like
Yeah,
it's
they are.
just, yeah,
It's wonderful.
God's greatest gift to us to understand a little bit about what it means to be a parent or to be a father.
100%. All right, man. Another fantastic conversation. I love bringing you on my shows, man, because I mean, you bring the fire every time. Absolutely. Tell everybody how they can find you, how they can reach you, how they can contact
Yeah.
you for any of your services, man.
Two real simple things. We're Wrestling with Truth on the Substack if you want to read some of my writings, my rantings, whatever you want to call them. And then freedomnutritioncoach.com is my website. So you can find me there. I do have some social media presence, but to be fair, I'm not that active on social media anymore because I find it to be fairly destructive. And
Yeah,
so that's why I'm like, let me keep it simple. You can find me here without all the distraction, without all the noise. Um, and yeah, podcasting is great. You can you search me and you'll find that I've been a guest on a few episodes. So
yeah, that's excellent. Wonderful. All right, brother. I tell you what, Navy veteran and board certified health coach and writer extraordinaire. Check out his Substack, Wrestling with Truth. Jonathan McLernon, thank you again, man, for joining us, for sharing everything you did, and you're never short of an opinion, and you know how to tell a story, man. I love having you on. Thank you for being here.
thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, folks. Like Jonathan said, point blank, end of story. It is time to wake up the lions. And more than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and sisters and let them hear you roar. Folks, the world is ready. You're ready. You just have to believe it.